Hello friends, this is Todd Wold, and I'm glad to be with you this morning online to participate in our Practicing Lent Together series for this Sunday. We're separated by social distance gaps called for during this pandemic, but in that separation I'm reminded of Ephesians 1:22-23 and how that applies to the church. God placed all things under his feet and appointed him to be head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills everything in every way. And when I think of those gaps between us right now, I feel like the Spirit of God fills those gaps and brings us together as a church in worship and in service in whatever form is called upon. So my specific topic today is going to seem strange. I was given the topic of media, and for a communication professor, this is a pretty wide open term, wide open subject area. And I could talk about fasting from media from a number of perspectives that have value, I think, entertainment media, social media, video gaming, etc. And all forms of media, ultimately place demands on our conscious attention, right? And as finite image bearers of God, we have a hard limit on that attention. We only have a certain number of hours to fix our attention on something in any given day. So all forms of media vie for our attention. And they do it pretty voraciously, mostly because the world has figured out a way to make money from it. But I say my topic's going to seem strange today, because I'm going to focus on fasting from news media. And that might seem odd given that we're going through what we're going through right now, this time of crisis. And as good citizens, of course, Christians need to be informed so that we can serve one another best, and I completely agree with that. Our society really depends on the news media to keep us informed of what's happening in our world, so there's really no doubt about the need for it. So why do I suggest fasting from news media? Well, for some of us, the news media consumes our attention disproportionately from other forms of media. And in this age of 24/7 news media on every available platform, news can certainly thoroughly monopolize our attention. And because it's viewed as this essential source of information, we don't always scrutinize our consumption the way we might for entertainment media, for example. But this has a really measurable effect on us. So TV researchers over decades have shown this to have a cultivation effect, where people with a heavy diet of news media, specifically bad news, literally see the world darker than those with an average diet. So in this time of crisis, certainly it's really important to stay informed about what's going on. And I don't wish anyone to be uninformed. But just like fasting from foods, not about discontinuing eating altogether, this isn't about not having the latest information that you need. It's about your daily budget of conscious attention. Right now you might find yourself glued to TV newscasts, YouTube clips, scrolling through your news feed, and reading any and all information about this pandemic. And I know my attention's been monopolized by news and information about what's going on with the pandemic. But at the same time, our attention can only be fixated on this thing for so long before it begins to have an effect on us. And some of that effect has to do with our well-being, our mental health. And so it's good to find ways to break away from that periodically and not be thoroughly consumed or monopolized in terms of our attention. So what are some easy ways that we can fast from news media during a pandemic? I mean, that's the natural question here, right? And I don't promise an easy answer to that, but there are some ways to help manage this issue. First off, you can shift the form of media to something that you can control a little bit better. I recently subscribed to a daily news email, and this allows me to schedule my time for when I want to read the update for that day. I don't need to sit in front of a broadcast or scroll through a live news feed and then get further monopolized in terms of my attention. I can control what I read by scanning through the headlines in that email. And this has worked well for me. It's provided, I think, a way to avoid other forms of the same media and get back some of that time. TV news can be especially fixating in terms of attention and your sense of reality. So shifting from TV news to some other form can be of some help as long as you commit to actually turning off the TV and the TV news for a period of time. On social media, you can pause accounts on your feed. I don't know if you know this, but in Facebook, for example, you can put certain accounts on hold. And so if you've followed a lot of news sources over the years on social media, you may find yourself inundated constantly with news updates. So it might be good to find some of those sources or some of the people that share a lot of news and pause them for 30 days. Now, this is not unfollowing or unfriending them. This is just putting them on pause for 30 days to reduce, again, the amount of news content that's coming your way. You also want to think about maybe your news diet before the pandemic across different news categories. Take some of this time while we're, allowed some time for reflection and think about what things you may have been consuming from a news standpoint that may need to be reset. There are some things that are naturally being reset right now. The news about sports might be something that you were fairly consumed with. Not a lot of sports news right now. And there could be other categories that you consumed a high level of news about and can think about resetting your relationship with how much news you consume. With any approach that works for you, it's good to remind yourself to pray for the people and the issues that are being reported in the news that you do consume. There's so many things that we can pray for right now, and the news can really supply your prayer list while also providing a way to activate rather than just spend your attention. You can do something with what you're getting from the news when you do consume the news. Now, I have two goals in suggesting a form of fasting from the news media right now. One is for your overall well-being. And as research has shown, a high diet of negative news coverage can lead to higher levels of anxiety and fear. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." And that leads to my second goal, a sound mind. Your conscious attention is a spiritual resource that you need to steward as a part of the body of Christ, the church. 1 Peter 4:7-8 says, "Be of sound judgment and sober spirit for the purpose of prayer, and above all, keep fervent in your love for one another." And I really love that passage and how it focuses the stewarding of a sound mind and a sober spirit toward prayer out of love for one another. And I think that's a good way to frame what you want to do in terms of your treatment of news media and your stewarding of your attention. I trust this perspective has been helpful for you as you consider the news media, stewarding your finite attention, and what fasting from news media could mean for you during this unusual, unprecedented Lenten season. God's blessings to you. Stay safe. You're in my prayers, and I hope to see you in person or online very soon.